This is Tuomas from Wolfheart. Before the dawn of Solace, Blacks and Eon, Rota Cielo, Final Harvest, and I guess a few others still. And you are watching the RichardMetalFan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Richard Metal Fan Interviews. This is episode number 39, and today's guest we're talking with Tuomas from the almighty Wolfheart, Before the Dawn, uh, Dawn of Solace, plethora of other bands. Today we're going to be talking about his journey through music from where he started to now, as well as like the history of all his bands, going through all the albums and all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's go talk to Tuomas. So what's up, guys? I'm here with Tuomas Saukkonen from Wolfheart, Before the Dawn, and a plethora of other bands. So Tuomas, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's been a busy but very productive day.
That's pretty good. So basically this format is I'm going to go through your catalog as well as like your musical journey from where you started to now. But before we go into that, let's just dive right back in the beginning. What were the first bands that got you into metal?
There's three key bands, which two of them are not metal at all. What got me interested in any kind of like a guitar playing was Gary Moore with the music video Over the Hills and Far Away. The video and the song were huge impact when I was like 6, max 7 years old. Then there was Kickstart My Heart of Mötley Crüe that made me start playing guitar. But what really got me into metal music was I was living in a really small village, like only 5,000 people living in the village. There was only one death metal band in the whole village.
Oh, wow.
And the vocalist was my neighbor. So I was like 9 years old when I got the first like full growling death metal demo from my neighbor. So I went straight from like I skipped all the parts that you usually have when you go into death metal. I was just like just getting into playing guitar and it's like a guitar driven melodic stuff. And then I got this very Gothenburg Swedish death metal influenced growling vocal stuff that I like instantly loved. So, and I actually that demo is like naturally super old, like 25 years, even more. And I still go back to that song. So it made a huge impact.
Awesome. So like guitar was your first instrument, because from what I've looked up, you also play bass and drums. So did guitar come first or then bass and drums?
Yeah, guitar was first. And I started playing drums when I was 15. The guitar I started when I was 8.
Ah, that's great. Great. And because I remember first seeing you back in 2018 on the Karakongren tour, I thought you just play guitar, but then I saw like on, obviously we were getting to it later, you're a multi-instrumentalist. And I was like, damn, you're fucking talented, man.
You know, I'm also starting to get really old. So if you start young enough, you don't need to be that talented. You will eventually learn the basics when the time goes on.
Okay, so a lot of people obviously know you from Wolfheart, then Before the Dawn. What are like the bands like before the Dawn? I'd love to hear like the in-depth version of that.
There wasn't that many bands. Main reason was the same village because not that many people in my age, like in general, listens metal or play any instruments. There was one guy who played guitar, and we went to the guitar lessons together and stuff like that. But there was no people to start a band with. So until I was 15, until we moved to a bigger city, there was no chance to even think about having a band or joining a band. So. And when I was 15 and when we moved, I started getting more into drums. So the first band that I had was a local rock band where I played drums. So it took me quite many years. I was like 20 when I started Before the Dawn, and that was my first metal band. So I was just a drummer in different bands until that point.
Sorry, I got blinked for a sec. So Before the Dawn, you put out your first album, which came out in 2003, called My Darkness. Like how did that come to be?
We made I think 3 EPs, and that was still the time when there was no internet, so we were just emailing mailing the EPs to different labels and waiting for a letter to come back. That was the Stone Age at that time. So it's we just got an offer, and without knowing any better, we signed the contract, and then the album came out. Now looking back at the time, maybe would have been a little bit better to know a little bit more about the contracts and the music business. But then again, when you're making your first album, then the excitement is bigger than your knowledge about the stuff that is going around with the music. But it went super easy. That was one of the few first labels that ever replied, and they replied with the offer already, and it went really smooth, but it wasn't very good cooperation, like in general.
All right. And then in between My Darkness and I believe 4:17 a.m., you did play drums for Bone Grinder on the No More Wasting Time EP. How did you hook up with those guys?
That's good digging to find that band.
Yeah, thank Metal Archives for that.
Yeah. But yeah, we did one EP with that. It was one of my oldest friends at that time that played guitar, and it was just like just guys playing music together with no like a bigger goals to make an album or anything. I was playing in quite many metalcore, hardcore bands at that time, and that was just one of them, and that was the only one who actually managed to go to studio and record something. And we did few really cool tours. We supported Napalm Death in Finland and Dismember.
Oh, nice.
Their Finnish tours. So it was fun time. That was a time when there was not that many clear goals with music or career plans. You just played with people you liked, and you played the music you liked. And if there was gigs, it was always exciting to go. So it was really fun time.
And then you back to Before the Dawn, you released your second album, 4:17 a.m. Was there a pressure to follow up My Darkness?
No. Oh. At that age, there's no pressure. You're just excited to be able to make albums, and it's a different thing now. That was my second album. I just finished my 21st album, so now the pressure is is there in a different level. But at that time, it was just being young and excited and just enjoying being able to make albums, going to studio. Everything was new, and it was just exciting. You didn't think about a pressure or stuff like that.
All right. And this is kind of a cliche question, but why is the album called 4:17 a.m.?
It is kind of it's not a running joke, but it's a running a thing underneath the Before the Dawn albums, because the last song of the first album is 4:16 a.m.
Oh.
And then there's the 4:17 a.m. album, but then there's 4:18 and 4:19 a.m. has been mentioned in a few songs in the other albums. So we've been running that clock, not in every album, but it's like this I don't want to use the word joke, because it's not a funny thing in that sense, but it's like this inside thing of the band. Next album, if we're gonna make one next year, probably there's gonna be mention of 4:21 a.m. either in the lyrics or the text, because we just want to keep that thing going on.
Awesome. So then the next album is The Ghosts. Tell me about that.
That was things got a little bit weird, and things didn't work out with the lineup anymore, and with the producer I was working at that time. So I ended up being a solo artist, and I played all the instruments on that album myself.
Oh, wow.
It made more sense at that time, because I just wanted to keep on making music, and I didn't really want to have that drama that quite often follows having members and big egos and stuff like that. So it was basically a solo album that I did under the name of Before the Dawn.
Oh, so was there like a lot of pressure to play, learn everything?
It was just, again, more exciting, because at least then I got to decide what happens myself. And I always, at that time, I already made a lot of demos just by myself at the studio. So it was started to be quite natural thing to work, like a way of working for me to build the songs and the albums layer by myself. So it's to me it was more clear at that way working. I knew exactly what's gonna be the drum arrangement and how I'm gonna record the bass that is gonna support the drums the best way, and how the guitars are gonna accent the drums and stuff like that. So less people, more simple it gets.
Yeah, that's great. And then it was like around the same year, 2006, you formed Dawn of Solace. How did you end up forming Dawn of Solace?
What
Yeah,
can you repeat?
how'd you like, I think it was around the year you released a debut album from Dawn of Solace
Yeah.
entitled Darkness. Like, how did you end up forming Dawn of Solace?
Uh, at that time, I noticed that I started to be really overactive with songwriting. So I had a lot more ideas and different ideas that I could ever fit for before the dawn. So I thought, like, why not to make like this double album kind of thing? And that was the original plan, to have those two albums come out together. And that's why the other one is called The Ghost, and the other one is called The Darkness, because it's based on this like mythical thing in Africa. There was this they were building a railroad, and there was two lions that were killing huge amount of like workers and people, and they the tribe people called the lions Ghost and the Darkness. I thought that's the coolest thing ever, so I wanted to name the albums The Ghost and the Darkness, but something got fucked up with the labels and they didn't come out on the same day, and that kind of like broke the whole idea. But that was the original idea, and that was the reason to have the Dawn of Solace, just to have another band for a different style of songs.
Yeah. So you could just have like, not have like if anything doesn't work with Before the Dawn musically, you can have like another thing to fall on.
Yeah.
All right. And then now back to Before the Dawn, you released Deadlight in 2007. I think you got signed to another label, Stay Heavy Records. How did they find you guys?
It was a Finnish label, so we had that conversation already ongoing before we ended the contract with the previous label. So they were basically just already waiting for us to get out from that deal, and for them to sign. It was a lot easier for me to have a label from Finland with the common language, and you could actually see the people you're working with. The other label was from Spain, so it was really complicated to have the proper communication and things working out. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know the last song on the album, it's just dot 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 dot. What was what's that song about?
Of the yeah, that's the song is about silence, and the title of the album, the song was meant to be Silence, but I didn't want to write it in letters. I just wanted to have something symbolize silence. So that's the three dots, and I have this three dots thing also tattooed on my face.
Yeah,
above the eyebrows and on my side. So there's like another connection for the dots also, but that wasn't very clear for the people. I got a lot of questions about that song title, and trying to like have that song on Spotify or any like digital distribution platform where dots are not actually official letters. So it was a lot more complicated than I thought originally.
All right. And then the next Before the Dawn album is Soundscape of Silence. Really good album. And I heard from looking it up, like originally, eventually Danny I can't pronounce his name, but he didn't play on the albums. But then it says that you considered that his drum tracks weren't good enough, so you ended up just playing the drums yourself.
I'm actually not sure. That might have happened. Yeah.
Well, how is that like?
I think he played. I'm not actually sure, but what actually happened with the Deadlight album? There we had a drummer, but we had to fire the drummer in the studio session. So I ended up playing the drums accidentally.
Oh wow!
But I'm not actually sure. Was that the case? That might have been the case. Damn! But it's a long time ago. I'm an old man. I am allowed to forget things, but
yeah, it's all good.
But we did change the drummers after that album.
Yeah, but I forget who played drums for that like it was you, but then during that whole cycle, who played drums on that?
I think it's when that album came out, we got Atte Palokangas as our new drummer. He plays in Beast in Black nowadays.
Oh, nice.
But
Nice. I'm seeing them in April.
yeah, he is and was an awesome drummer, and he joined the band right after the Soundscape of Silence album came out, and he played with the band until the last album, Phoenix Rising.
Right. And then did he like bring any something like new rhythmically to Before the Dawn?
Yeah, it's more like naturally it's just, you can only hear it on the following album, Death Star Rising. But he had quite a big impact because he's so much more like this power metal type of a drummer, like insanely powerful playing, and the way he builds up the fills and everything is completely different that I've ever done or I could imagine doing. So it was really like a big boost for me as a songwriter to have that like a completely different type of a drummer that will make the songs in my ears sound quite a much different, because I always focus on the drums first, even though I'm mainly a guitar player. So, and I'm really like a big fan of his playing style anyway. So he brought so many cool things that I loved on the drumming. So yeah, he brought a lot.
Okay, and then that same year, 2008, you hooked up with the Final Harvest, and you did the End EP. How did you hook up with those guys?
Again, like at that time, most of my friends were musicians, and it was just, again, I guess we all get bored, and we started just playing something new together, and that made actually it was a full album, and we did one European tour, one small one, and some gigs in Finland. But it was more like just having fun. Again, not that not that big of a goals or anything. It was just. And I got to play death metal with drums, so to me it was like a holiday from the other band activities. So
yeah, and then in between Soundscape and of course Death Star Rising, you started Black Sun Aeon. How did you end up starting that band?
damn, that. I guess I was more bored and frustrated than I remember, because yeah, still there were some issues with Before the Dawn with the label and the band inside the band. So I needed more like a project where I could just focus on the music and just not think about the business side of the music or the career or the tours or the scheduling or the labels. So that was just like that's my way of like relaxing a little bit and just focus on the music without the business side.
So yeah, and you released Darkness Walks Beside Me in 09. How did that whole writing and recording process for that come to be?
That was really cool thing to write and work, because when you take all those like what usually gets you frustrated in the music business or the music, you take the labels, the management, the agencies, the booking, the scheduling, deadlines. If you take all of that away, you only get the good part, which is making the music, at least for me. So that was just being able to focus on the music. And there was some really cool like details with the album. There was now he only plays guitar in Amorphis, but Tommy, the rhythm guitarist, used to do the vocals in the early Amorphis albums. Like I think Tales from the Thousand Lakes was the last album he did the growling.
Yeah, still my favorite Amorphis album.
Yeah, but I managed him to convince him to do first growling after the Thousand Lakes album on that Black Sun Aeon album. So he does few lines in one song, and then I had the Ville from Moon Sorrow to write some lyrics with me. So there was like this like small but really cool collaborations also on the album.
And then 2010, you released the second Black Sun Aeon album, Rota. And I think it's a really quick turnaround from Darkness Walks Beside Me. Did you just have like enough music just flowing? You just needed to write the second album right away?
Yeah, it's I have a like for me natural like a tempo for like album making is easily one per year. So it's yeah, I had way enough songs. That's why it was a double album already, because I wanted to have like I wanted to try how is that like working with the double album. That's not very pleasant thing to do. There's enough work for one guy if it's a solo project for one album alone. So that was a little bit too much of a work when it comes to the actual recordings and rehearsing. And like writing is easy. You just come up with the ideas and you make it like it's like a building a puzzle. But when you go to studio and you have a double amount of drum tracks, double amount of guitar and the bass, double amount of everything, that gets quite much of a work.
Yeah, and then you released the final album with Black Sun Aeon, Blacklight Deliverance. Like, what was that whole writing and recording process like? And did you know that you just wanted to like end things with a bang eventually?
Yeah, that was clearly the final album of the band, and again, it was one of those like side projects, like clearly a side project. So there wasn't that many like ambitious plans except the music itself. So it like felt good to end the band with that album, and I wanted to like bring the female vocals on that album also, so it was a little bit more diverse than I used to do with the vocals, so I could step back a little bit with my growling and have more room for the both clean vocalists. So it was a little bit different experience, but it was clearly we knew already it's going to be the last one. So
yeah, and then you hooked up with a Rotaselu. I probably butchered that, but then you played bass on the the only album they did Pimmies. I'd like to hear about that. I don't think anybody talks about Rotas that band. I'm not gonna bother butchering the name.
yeah, it went good enough. It's a very like complicated Finnish word for any non-Finnish person, but yeah, I wanted to make one album with the Finnish language only as for the vocals, and it came out. I was really happy about the album, but things didn't work out with the label in the end at all. So it kind of like didn't make any sense for me to continue. But it wasn't meant to be just one album project. But sometimes things work out with the label, sometimes they don't, and I don't have I'm that short-tempered. So if I see that things are not working like well at all, I don't have any reasons to continue the things. I can just do something else because
right. You just don't want to phone it in.
Yeah, I've seen how things end when the band and the label doesn't see eye to eye, and there's more frustration than anything else. The result is going to suck anyway. So
yeah, and then
I still really like the album. That was. And as a lyric writer, it was really interesting to be like to be writing in Finnish language, which I never done before. At that time I had quite many albums written in English, so it kind of like was the default thing, and I had my own system of like writing the lyrics and doing the rhymes and doing the stories. So changing the language changed everything. So.
Right. Could you see yourself like writing like Finnish like lyrics for like Wolfheart or any other projects?
I could. There's there's two completely Finnish songs in the Wolfheart catalog also.
Oh, yeah, I need to check that out. But anyway, with Before the Dawn, we got Death Star Rising, pretty good album. You also got signed to Nuclear Blast Records. How did they end up finding you guys? Because that's like a big metal label.
It is still, I guess, the biggest, but it was actually the Finnish label licensed us to Nuclear Blast, so it wasn't a direct deal with them. Now looking back at things, it might have been really good thing that we could have done the deal directly, but it wasn't the case back then. But yeah, things went really well with the Deadlight album. And it continued well enough with the Soundscape of Silence, so there was a lot of interest from bigger labels at that time. So Nuclear Blast was the one that the Finnish label picked for the licensing, and yeah, it was really like a good label at that time for at least Before the Dawn. So they pushed things really well forward.
And then we got the final Before the Dawn album, Rise of the Phoenix. pretty good album, and it's now crazy. This album is now 10 years old as of this year. Or do you have like a different perspective about this album now as opposed to when you first put it out?
Well, I'm not that pissed off anymore. I was really pissed off and frustrated when the album came out, because then that was the time when things really fell apart with the Finnish label, and it was a lot of things went really badly wrong with that album release. But writing the album, I knew already that that's going to be the last Before the Dawn album, and there's this one song called Throne of Ice, and when I got that song ready, then I knew exactly what Wolfheart is going to sound like. So that album is like a pathway to Wolfheart musically to me, because writing that album, I was already planning the next step where I'm going to go musically with the next project. So that was kind of like, it was the last album of Before the Dawn, but partly the first album of Wolfheart already.
Right. So when you started with Wolfheart, did you have like a different mind frame from like the different projects, or is there like sort of like a similar with like the creative aspect of it?
I wanted to combine as many elements from my different projects as possible. So I took the really low tuning guitars and bass from Black Sun Ian, and I got the more aggressive parts from Before the Dawn. And the one big issue was I really needed to have a small break from the music business, so I released the first album by myself. So
Yeah, which is Winterborn right here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is still my dearest album of them all. So it was really important for me to be able to do one album without any labels, anything. I did the distribution myself with this one Finnish like chain store, keep things super simple, super easy, and things work out really well. It led me into a very good place that I'm at the moment musically.
yeah, it's still a great album. I remember seeing the live stream last year when you played this in the full. And how was that whole experience like playing this album?
Playing the album, awesome. I really enjoyed the rehearsing the songs, because there's some of the songs we never played live, and some songs like Chasm that we stopped playing like 5 years ago. So there was a lot of like really cool songs to play, but I really hate the streaming thing. That's I like to rehearse with the guys. I like to play live, but the stream stuff is just horrible. It's so unnatural thing for a musician. So the actual thing was sucked quite a bit, but the rehearsing process to get to play the song after such a long break, that was really cool.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. And the next year, this album will be 10 years old. Is there like a possibility we could see Wolfheart celebrate this album somehow?
There was a plan 3 years ago still that when the album is 10 years old, we could like make a small tour playing that album from the beginning to the end or something like that. But all the schedules we ever had or the long-term plans got fucked up with the pandemic. So now it looks like when that album is 10 years old, we're going to be right in the middle of the touring cycle of the next album. So I don't know what we're going to do, but definitely there's going to be something. But the tour probably doesn't work out that well because there's another album already out at that point. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I don't see any reason to rewrite or re-record any of the songs, because I really think the album is perfect as it is. So I don't know, maybe.
Right, and then the next Wolfheart album is I believe Shadow World. What was that like going from this to this?
Well, I played the drums on the Winterborn, which is like the downside of being like a multi-instrumentalist. You don't have more hours in your day than any other people, so you need to divide your hours when it comes to developing your skills as a musician. So it's really hard to reach certain levels as being a musician. So the biggest leap from Winterborn to Shadow World is Jonas as a drummer, because I got what I consider a real drummer instead of me. So I could like lift the tempos. I could do like a lot more complex and more difficult and faster and shittier arrangement with drums, because I had a really awesome drummers to play them. So that like opened so many doors when it comes to songwriting. We could actually play more like this black metal stuff, like Ian of Cold, and like a really like a faster bass drums, like in Resistance. So that like changed the style of the band quite much, because I was able to just write more aggressive stuff.
And then the next album, and I don't even know how you pronounce this. I'm not gonna bother pronouncing it. This album, what is it like going? What is this album all about?
That's the, how did the labels go? That was the last album for Spine Farm.
Yeah,
and we knew that already that we wouldn't want to continue, and we hoped that they wouldn't use the options. So it was writing of the album was really cool. We get to work really cool studios, and we started touring at that time. So there was a lot of really cool things happening in the band. We played really good festivals in Europe, so things were really moving like a really fast forward, and things were getting bigger. But it also, like when working with the album in the studio, knowing that this is going to be last album for that label, that's always cast this like a shadow of uncertainty, because when you're on the last album of the contract, there's no guarantee that the label will they always say they do their best work, but sometimes they just want to cut the losses, and they want to do minimum effort and just trying to make as much money as they can on the last album of the contract. So it was like a little bit more like uncertainty in the air with that album.
Yeah, and then eventually you got signed to Napalm Records. How did Napalm find Wolfheart?
Actually, the Napalm guys were emailing me already when the Winterborn came out.
Oh,
but
wow.
At that time, I already made the deal with Spine Farm. So we were just like emailing once a year, just updating the situation. So they were like after the band for a few years already. So when we were out from the Spine Farm deal, the same day I was on the phone with Napalm guys, just like negotiating the deal with them. So yeah.
Yeah, and then you released the first album, Constellations of the Black Heart. And this was honestly the album that got me into you guys and how I discovered you all. How was that whole experience like? And I believe you also toured the US for the first time. That was an experience in itself.
Yeah, that was like that was really big leap for us from Spine Farm to Napalm, and to have a label that is strong enough to release the album in North America and Europe on its own without any licensing deals. That was quite a big thing. And that was the time when we did our first really solid European tours, and we toured North America. And so yeah, there was like a lot of really cool things happening in the band. We did Asia for the first time. We did Russia for the first time. We went to South America also. Wow. It was the busiest time so far. We played 140 gigs in 10 months.
And that's insane. Is there like any other countries that you're really looking forward to playing next that Wolfheart hasn't gotten to yet?
Australia would be cool. Yeah. But it is so far away that I don't think how much that actually would make sense. But that would be cool.
Yeah, eventually you need to tour in Africa, and then probably do like Metallica did and just play in Antarctica.
Yeah, we would need to grow a little bit bigger. Yeah, Metallica is a complicated comparison, because wherever they go, they would find audience. They're in a different level. But that is one of the coolest things about being in a band and touring, that you get to see so many places you would never end up. Like the South America was like really excited, because like North America doesn't differ that much from Europe. There's certain things that are quite different, and of course, as a European and Scandinavian person watching a lot of movies, I already knew all the stereotypes about different areas in North America, but seeing those in my own eyes, it was insanely cool. But it's a different kind of exotic when you are in El Salvador, for example, and the area where the venue is so hostile that you are not allowed to even go to the outside the venue without a bodyguard. So it's but it's a cool thing to get to see the places, and that's why past 2 years have sucked so bad, because I've never been in Finland this long,
Yeah,
in this long of a period. So
yeah,
I miss the touring when it comes to playing the gigs, but I also miss the aspect of traveling.
yeah, I totally. And like that first US tour you did with Wolfheart with Karlak Angren, more specific mest. What was that whole experience like? And were you like nervous like coming to the US? I believe it was like your first time ever for being in America.
Not nervous at all, just excited, because when you done like Russia and East Europe and stuff like that, then there's a reason to be nervous. Like things might actually happen that are not at all in your control. But North America, only like the complication with North America, especially US, is the whole visa procedure, especially when you are like a young band still, and it's your first time applying a visa. So that is a huge amount of paperwork and stuff like that. And we were only nervous about the visa, like if we get it or not. Like that has happened. That if the officials, if the government don't think that you are serious or big enough band, they might not give you the visa at all. So, but playing in North America and that tour itself was really smooth landing for
Yeah.
us
First time
in that
seeing you guys
company.
there, and I saw the Atlanta show was amazing. And I've pretty much been a fan since.
That's awesome. And it was one of my favorite tours so far. Still, it was. I've known more Principium S guys since that we actually did the gigs with the Final Harvest and more Principium S back in the day. So I've known the guys since then, and Karagangren guys, we got along insanely well. So it was really like a smooth and easygoing tour, and there was no hiccups at all. Really good audiences on every venue. So overall, one of the easiest and smoothest tours I've ever done.
Yeah, and then in 2019, which was last time I saw you guys, you did the tour with Children of Bodom and Swallow the Sun, which is amazing bill, which is totally different because Karagangren was more black metal, but then Children of Bodom's more the melodic death metal, similar to you guys. So I guess we played with like a variety of different bands. So do you ever notice like a different crowd reaction depending on the tours that you're on?
We haven't had that big of a crossover yet that we would have noticed. Like we try to be careful when we choose the tours, because we always want to be in a tour that there's our music fits, but we could find new fans also. So it wouldn't make sense to always play with the bands exactly on the same style. So, and yeah, both tours were diverse, but still I think our music worked really well for the whole audience.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah, yeah. I feel like your sound could like appeal to like different artists. You could play with like death metal bands, black metal bands, melodic death metal bands. I feel like it's like the best of both worlds.
yeah.
Well, so then going back to Constellations of the Black Art, I've like was there a lot of like personal stuff that pretty much influenced the sound of this album?
I'm just trying to go back there now. Not really, not really. I was in as a human being and a person, I was in a really good place. So there was nothing in my life that I needed to reflect on a negative way on the album. But I did wanted to make a really dark album. Again, that was the direction where we were heading with Wolfheart. After the after the debut album, each album was a little bit more darker and more aggressive. So I was just continuing in that path. But again, having the new label and everything else, it was like we were super motivated and excited, because we knew that this is like the best chance we ever had at that time to get the band moving forward. We had the new management at that time, so there were so many things to look forward to while making that album. So it was there was only positive things actually happening, even though the album is dark and it might make it seem that there were some issues that I needed to reflect.
Yeah, and there was like on that album, it's like there's like feels like there's a lot of elements of like death metal and black metal. So do you try to like stick with a sound, or do you try to like experiment?
at that time, I really wanted to stick with that sound, and I guess I wanted to see how death metal-ish style I could actually push the band into, but that's going to change with the next album quite a lot.
All right. Next up, we get Wolves of Karelia. Great album. One of my favorite albums of 2020. How did this whole album, like going from this to this?
Well, that was with the Constellation is we did a huge amount of gigs, and the plan was to knock open as many doors in different like regions and different continents as possible, because Wolves of Karelia was supposed to be the album that will like pushes the band forward, and we do like the plan was to continue touring for 2 years at least after the album. We had a huge plans with the agency and the management, and like that was the album that we had the biggest like highest hopes and like biggest plans, and everything was like all the stars were aligned perfectly. But the first tour of the album, the North American one, got like postponed just 1 week before we had the flights. Yeah. And then the whole world got shut down with the pandemic. So that was like all the plans we ever got with that album got completely fucked up. So there was so much like motivation and excitement when writing the album and doing the album. There was so much bitterness and frustration when the album came out. So it like the mood changed completely, because it's not just that we weren't able to tour anymore because all the borders were shut, but of course it damaged the sales quite much. We weren't able to promote the album at all. And there were some countries in Europe that the record stores weren't even open on the week where the album came out. So it's just so many obstacles. Like and yeah, that's and then yeah, at this point there's already a new album in the works, so that album kind of like disappeared. We never get to do a single tour with that album, so it's very like mixed feelings about the album, because it never got the chance. We never got to enjoy the songs on stage. So yeah, complicated album.
Yeah, but still one of my favorites. Like I just love like the whole theme of like the Winter Wars. So do you usually like think of a concept beforehand, or just it comes just naturally and organically?
If there's a concept, then I always think it like before. But that was the first actual concept album I've ever done. So I knew like before I started writing what the album is going to be like.
Right. Is there like a lot of like research that goes in hand when coming up with said concepts?
At least there should be. I know the Finnish war history really well. That is taught quite thoroughly in the school. So like most people in Finland know the same facts that I knew when I was thinking about the theme, but I was spending quite a amount of time like reading interviews or watching the video interviews of the veterans of the war, like hearing different, like dozens and dozens of people telling their version, how it felt to be on the front lines, how it felt after the war. So I could actually have a really good like a point of view from the actual people in the war, not just the statistics, how many tanks the Russian had compared to us, but the more like the personal like point of view.
Right. And with the listening to this album, does the listener have a better idea of listening to this order? Like this, should they like start with Hail of Steel and end with the Ashes, or can this be like approached from different angle?
Yeah, it's that's the thing with the theme albums nowadays, because the whole music industry is more heavily like leaning into streaming services, which means that there is like more pressure on the singles than the whole album at some cases, because you need to have more singles nowadays to be able to have a stronger stand on the playlists. So a lot of people get to know the bands from individual songs instead of like going through the whole album. So it is a concept album, but it doesn't follow the track list. So each song is like individual part of the concept. So it doesn't matter which song you pick, the song is still in the same theme. And yeah.
Right. Can the concept also influence the music as well as the lyrics?
Yeah. At least on that album, it did quite much because it became really like a heroic in my ears because of that. Because of course, as a Finnish person, that's a huge thing in our history, being able to stop the Russian invasion. And when you look at the numbers, it doesn't make any sense how that was even possible. Like looking at the number of the troops or the planes or the cannons or the whatever there is, like statistically, it didn't make any sense. So yeah, of course, I approach the music also in a way that this is like my way of honoring the veterans of the war. So it came more like a heroic than I would have done any of the other albums.
Right. With every album that Wolfheart has done, does it like represent who you and like the rest of the band are at that particular point?
In a way, it's a different thing that with the Dawn of Solace nowadays. That's a lot more like a personal picture of myself. Wolfheart is influenced with so many other things also. Is in a way, but not that deeply.
Yeah. Right. And speaking of Dawn of Solace, that same year you released the long-awaited follow-up to Darkness Waves. What made you decide to like start up Dawn of Solace again?
There was already like 5 albums done with Wolfheart, so I started to have a lot of different kind of like ideas musically, and it made sense to have a side project like after a long break. But I didn't want to start something new, and Dawn of Solace was different than the others. The other ones I decided to quit. Dawn of Solace got fucked up with the Spanish label, and 2007 I was given 2 choices: either pay them 8,000 euros or hire a Spanish lawyer.
Oh shit.
That was my options to get the band out from the contract, to be able to do any more music with that band. So the label finally went into bankruptcy, I think 2014 or 15. And then I got a written confirmation from the label boss that now I got all the rights for the band name back, that I can continue the music if I want. And I was just basically waiting for like the good timing that it would fit for the schedule of Wolfheart. So it was like a growing idea in the background already, like 2015, but I was just waiting for like a proper timing.
All right. And then back to Wolfheart, last year you released the Skull Soldier EP. Does this sort of like have any relationship to Wolves of Karelia, or is this just like a one-off thing while we wait for a follow-up to Wolves of Karelia?
Well, it was actually a follow-up. It continued the same theme. There's 2 reasons to make the EP. One was we honestly thought that the world is going to go back to normal 2021. So we wanted to have a release for the beginning of the year when we were supposed to start touring again, but that never happened.
Yeah.
But the second reason was there was one. I thought I knew the Finnish war history, especially on the Second World War, as well as anybody could. But there was this one American reporter from Texas that reminded me about this like a small story about this one small battalion that was like this special forces of winter war and winter like warfare, and they painted skulls on their helmets. And there's some really cool stories about them, and they were part of some of the key battles, and I didn't know about that, and I didn't do any songs about them for the album. So that's kind of sucks. That sucked quite a lot because the English version of the battalion name was Skull Soldier. So that's already like an ideal song title, and I completely dismissed that while doing a theme album about the exact same war. So I wanted to be able to add that as a part of the Wolves of Karelia like theme. So that's the reason for the title and the song on the EP.
And like exploring like new concepts sort of like serves as like the new direction like that you will go ahead and with in the future.
Excuse me?
Like when exploring like new concepts, does it also serve with like a new direction in the future,
Yeah.
like musically?
The next album is most probably going to be a theme album again, but a completely different kind of theme. A lot more like history and mythology and nature based. So there's no reason to write about the wars for the next album, so that means it's going to be a lot more melodic.
Cool. So like does the time in like isolation with this world that we're in and sort of all the uncertainty sort of like influence like the music, or do you try to like detach yourself from like the pandemic bullshit that we're still in almost 2 years later?
Well, the problem with me is that I still have the same urge writing music constantly. So I've been writing a lot of music during the past 2 years, and yeah, we just got the new Dawn of Solace album out already, and but it's a lot more frustrating at the moment because you don't have any of the excitement that you used to have when you are like releasing an album. You have a plan with the tours, and you know already what's going to happen for the next 12 months with the band and where you're going to travel and where you're going to play. And now you don't have any of those plans. So, and that's quite a big part of that side when you are pushing the band forward and trying to make this as a career and as a like a profession for yourself. Those kind of things play quite a big role. So there's been definitely more time to focus on the music and write more music and be like more at the studio, but at the same time, it's not very motivating time. Like I've been talking with a lot of like other guys in different Finnish metal bands about the same topic, and everybody has time. Now, there's so much time to write music, but so less motivation in that sense. Like you still want to write the music, but when it comes to like making the album, you are losing quite a big part because you don't have the excitement of the future. You only have question marks and no real answers. What's going to happen this year? How are things going to be next year? So,
And then we got the latest Dawn of Solace album, Flames of Perdition, which came out last month. How was that like following up Waves?
that was one of the biggest positive things of last year, because that band is never gonna like do proper touring because me and the vocalists are busy with our own bands, and it was like meant to be more like a studio project. So that band wasn't damaged by the pandemic at all. It didn't cancel any of our plans. It made the schedules even easier to work with Dawn of Solace music because I didn't have to stop the studio work or the writing process because of Tuomas of Wolfheart. So that was a band that things got easier because of the pandemic. So
Right.
it was like it helped me quite a lot. It took a lot of the frustration off from Wolfheart because I had another band that I could just go to studio, do the music, and whatever happens, the pandemic is not gonna like fuck anything up.
Okay, so and as a vocalist, do you usually need to hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or do you usually have a lyrical concept in mind that can help determine the music itself?
I have a concept ready when I get the first idea of the song. Then I know the concept of the also the songwriting process, but I can't write anything down like when it comes to final lyrics until I have the song ready. So I've started to have this really like a shitty habit to write the lyrics while recording the album in the studio, which works for me really well. But when you have like other singers, like I have Mikko in Dawn of Solace, he's not that happy about that because there's a lot of I sometimes in the worst cases with Blacks and Ian, I had the guys coming to the studio to do their part, like vocal parts. And that was the moment when I started writing the lyrics, and I just write the lyrics on a pizza box or napkin or whatever I had in hand and just gave like, sing this. And apparently like a clean vocalist wants to rehearse and prepare and know what they sing before they come to studio. So that was what I heard later on was not very professional from my end, but I really, the more ready the song is, the easier for me is to write the lyrics.
Right. And do you tend to leave lyrics open to interpretation, or you try to engage the listener into what the songs are about?
Both basically. I don't want to be too straightforward, but then again, I do want people to understand the point of the lyrics. The point doesn't need to be that they understand me as a writer, but there's always like the concept or some kind of a story behind the lyrics. So I want that to be like heard at least in some level.
All right. And I got a few more questions. So going to playing live, is there like a similar energy to that you're channeling when playing live as to opposed to when you're recording an album, or they're almost kind of like two separate entities?
Completely two different things. Like whilst recording certain songs, like a good example is Boneyard from the Constellation album. Is like when you're like when I was writing that song, I already knew that this is going to be a really good live song. So while recording the song and rehearsing the song, I already had in my mind how this is going to like work on the live sets, how fun it's going to be to play the song live, but it's completely different. The studio work and writing is completely isolated, and like a good live show is the energy between you and the audience. So it comes completely from a different place.
All right. And you ready for the hardest question of the interview?
Let's see if it's going to be the hardest, but yes, I am.
How do you know when a song is done?
That's the easiest question ever.
Oh.
It's just, I just know it. I don't need to like think about it. Like, I guess that helps that I play drums and guitar as a main instruments, because I know a lot of songwriters that songs like are built by just individual parts, or it's like just like small ideas that where you compile a song. But when I get the first idea, I immediately start building the whole song around that. So it's just yeah, it's super easy to know when the song is written. It's a different thing to know when the song is ready in the mix or the recordings, because that's a completely different like dimension of working with the music when you're adding the tracks and doing the balances. And at some point I always have this meltdown moment when I just everything sounds like crap and I just want to add shitload of stuff or just delete everything or stuff like that. But writing the song, it's just they kind of write themselves.
All right. And the final question I wanted to ask is coming from Finland. I think Finland is like the metal capital of the world, but I also think it's diverse. Like a band like Wolfheart is different from a band like Children of Bodom. That's different from a band like Amorphous, and is different from a band like Nightwish. Is there like a scene in Finland that you felt part of, or was it for the goal for like Wolfheart or before the Dawn of Solas to like get outside of Finland and play in front of like different audiences of different countries?
It was always like the point was get out from Finland. The Finnish metal scene is very strong and active, but it's also very small. There's only 5 million people living in the whole country. So that doesn't leave that much like that big of a number of the metal audience. So just being stuck in Finland would be really horrible, even though I do appreciate the Finnish metal scene. But 5 million people is not that much. It's there's 3 times the population just alone in London, and that's just one city in England. So it's and I never really like felt part of the metal scene anyway. In that sense, I was only just interested of writing the music myself, but in a weird way, I'm very well connected with the metal scene in Finland because I used to work as a stage manager for like 15 years in metal festivals and venues in Finland. So I work with all the metal bands in Finland multiple times. So I have a very strong connection, but besides that profession of a stage manager, I don't really connect with the rest of the metal bands in Finland.
All right. And so before we go, I just want to thank you so much for this conversation. Is just anything else you would like to promote with Wolfheart before the Dawn of Solas? I know we got the Devastation of the Nation tour happening this spring. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to see you in Birmingham and in Alabama and Atlanta, Georgia. It's just because that lineup's so goddamn good. I have to see it more than once. So is just anything else you would like to promote?
I just hope that the world goes back to normal and we get to do the stuff we used to do like back in 2019. But it was really pleasant. It was I haven't done this kind of like a trip on the memory lane like for a long time. It was really cool to go through all the albums, and it wasn't that cool to notice that it's been so long. Like time passes, I get older. It's really cool to have those 20 albums, but like you said, like Winterborn is going to be 10 years old.
Yeah, 2023.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like one decade has passed, but apparently it has.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool to talk.
Yeah, so everybody, Tuomas from Wolfheart, we'll see you next time.
Awesome.